Hi and welcome to Mod of the Week. This week we are talking about front brake rotors. In the case of most bikes, they have a very solid mounted rotor. These are advantageous because they transfer heat better, but in the case of an impact or if they do happen to get too hot, then they do have a tendency to warp. The other problem is the front brake rotor is very small. These dual sport bikes, at least the smaller ones, are intended for more off-road usage. When off-road you don't really need a very large front rotor. In fact, it can be disadvantageous to have one. But on road, you really need a much larger one because you're traveling at much higher speeds and you need a lot more braking force. Having a Supermoto rotor does cater very much towards adventure riders because you can get a lot more braking force out of it. So here's the original rotor. Let's see. They both are floating. The difference between a floating and a fixed rotor is that it has these kind of spacers in between it held in there by springs. And this allows the outer disc to morph a little bit, but not fix in that position. So it allows it to run a lot warmer. Also, to some effect, if you bump into a rocket, it will be able to absorb that without bending. The size of the rotor improves braking because it essentially allows more surface area for the brake to get a grip on. So you're allowed to get more friction off of it, even though you're using like the same amount of clamping force. There's no way to improve your maximum amount of braking capacity. The limit of your ability to brake is actually defined by the limit of traction on the tires. The point when the tire locks up and just starts sliding across the ground. What a larger rotor does is it makes it so you hit that point with less grip on the brake itself. And even for me, riding around town with just this by myself was still very annoying because people expect bikes to be able to stop very quickly, and you couldn't really pull it off. With two people, it ended up becoming really dangerous because there's this noise that the brakes make when they actually get too hot, and that actually really wears down your brake pads and it reduces your braking capability because these are just too hot to get friction on them. For me, after putting on this 320mm disc as opposed to the 240mm disc that was on here, mathematically the amount of braking force as relative to the amount of grip that I've applied increases by about a third. I would say that riding it feels as though the bike has twice the amount of braking force as it would. So since the front brake's a lot bigger, you do have to use a different mounting bracket, a different spacer. Calipers mount to a spacer which then mounts to the fork on every single bike. The way that the original one mounted, it basically had this brake sitting in the groove right here. Thanks for watching. This has been Mod of the Week.